have you join us this. So thank you very much for joining us and welcome all of you for turning up for this session today. This is one of our coffee talks for this year, and we really appreciate you are coming to participate. So I also like to request Jackie, please introduce yourself and Mike, and then after that, we see what next. So Mike, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Mchula. I'm a development catalyst and also founder of the Kenya Association of Fundraising Professionals. Happy to be with you today, this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jackie Mathaga, Jacqueline, but you can call me Jackie. I am the Vice Chair, KAFP. I am also the Director, Resource Mobilization at Daystar University, amongst many other things that I do in the development space. Karibuni sana, we are so glad that you could join us today.
Thank you very much, Jackie. So, Brenda, do you have Caroline? Caroline, can you introduce yourself? And Anne, also, if Anne is around, Caroline, please take it there, then Anne will follow you.
Okay, good morning. My name is Caroline Wanjiko. I am the Business Development Coordinator at KAFP. Welcome to today's coffee talk, and I trust it will be a fruitful one. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne Mutuka, Finance and Admin Coordinator at Kenya Association of Fundraising Professionals. We are grateful for joining us for the July Coffee Talk, and our sincerest apologies for starting the session late. Thank you.
So thank you very much again. So I'll request Brenda just to do a brief synopsis of the what you have today, and then Jackie will take it from there. So Brenda, over to you, and then Jackie will welcome the speakers. Brenda.
All right. Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So our coffee talk today, we will be talking about when the budget is a problem. So we'll be reframing the costs, and that is how to articulate your budget without taking or undervaluing your project, undervaluing or your organization. So we will be very prepared for a very interactive session. What you expect to leave this session with a full indirect negotiation guide on how to defend your budget when the donor pushes back, and even how to align your team on how you can work together to make sure that the project goes through. So you can, if you have a budget, Karibu, you can prepare it. You can draw it near. You might have to present it, or if you have any questions or any troubles that you have been going through of late, this is a chance you can take advantage of this coffee talk, and we could settle that. So I am going to introduce, or to have Jackie proceed and go ahead and introduce our speaker for the session. So over to you, Jackie.
Right, thank you, everyone. So we are expecting Benson Ojwang to join us at some point. He is a grant writer, grant administration, planning and budgeting and forecasting expert. But for now, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome Ms. Corazon Aquino. Corazon is a partnership strategist and executive leader with over 15 years of experience driving resource mobilization, strategic partnerships, and thought leaderships across public health, education, and gender equity. So when you see her face, you'll wonder, 15 years, oh my goodness, she looks so young. So as Director of Partnerships at AMREF Health Africa, she leads high-value partnerships that bring together public, private, philanthropic, and community actors to achieve sustainable development outcomes across Africa. She's passionate about women's leadership. Corazon is also a co-founder of Raised to Lead, which is a platform that promotes father-daughter allyship, and the role of men as champions of women leadership and gender equality. You will enjoy listening to her. Corazon, you are so welcome. Please take the stage. I would urge everybody, if you do not have somewhere to write, you need to get a notebook and just pay attention. And karibuni sana.
Thank you and good morning once again. Thank you very much, Jackie, for that lovely introduction. Sometimes when you get introduced, you wonder whether they're talking about you because of the many things that you've said. But I have to acknowledge that I'm extremely honored, extremely excited to be joining my fellow fundraisers, my fellow partnerships people on the call. As Jackie has said, my name is Corazon Aquino. I am the Partnerships Director at AMREF Health Africa. I lead AMREF's global partnership development and also our thought leadership agenda. And I've been at it for 15 years. I started while in the for-profit side, that is NCBA. It was CBA those days, moved to ActionAid, and currently I have been serving at AMREF for 10 years now. So I'm very excited to be here. This is a conversation that is very close to my heart. As a fundraiser for the last 15 years, I sit in a lot of donor meetings discussing budgets, showing the value that organizations bring when they do get enough and sufficient overheads. And so it's not really my presentation, so do forgive me if I fumble a little bit. We were expecting Benson to join me to do this together with him, but unfortunately he hasn't joined. And so immediately he joins, please just feel free to nudge me and I'll be happy to hand over for him. Someone is still sharing, so I'll need rights to share kindly the deck, or if someone can share the deck on my behalf. But what I was saying is we were expecting Benson, who's actually more experienced, more qualified in this area where budgeting matters, but unfortunately he hasn't joined yet, and we are hoping that he will join us along the way. And so as the slides come up, or as I'm given rights to share, let me send my request because I can't share.
So, Brenda, you can unpin what is on the screen and enable Corazon to share.
Oh, yes, now it's possible. So our topic of the day is when your budget is the problem. And I think this is something, a conversation that is always very uncomfortable with donors, as I've put it in the beginning. Many times I find myself on the other side of the table where we have to defend certain costs on the budget. And the tension has always been...
I would like to put it on full screen.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
Thank you.
So as I was saying, the topic of the day is when your budget is the problem, reframing costs for sustainable growth. A lot of the tension between funders and implementers or organizations that do delivery at the community level is always about budget lines. And when you think about it, it's never a conversation about how many people you're going to reach or what the deliverables are. It's usually along the lines or the activities that you're proposing. Most of the tension is usually along the lines of the overhead costs. And this could span from staff time, that is for your finance people, M&D kind of activities, or transport or communication. So these are the things that ensure that we deliver results from a project or a program perspective, but they're the very things that create tension in rooms where we are negotiating with donors. And so I have come to appreciate that programs do not happen by accident. And on behalf of every successful program is an organization that is strong, that is credible, is an organization that has credible people, talented people with the right skills, good governance, good financial management, and systems that work, be it ERP, that is the enterprise resource planning, be it CRM, and many other platforms that we use to manage donor money. But these are the very things that sometimes causes tension, and we have to really put up a fight, quote unquote, to ensure that they are passed in the budget. And so I suspect a lot of us have such stories to tell. And maybe just to get us started, I would just like to indulge us a little bit. What is one budget line that you have had to explain or defend more than once to a donor or a partner? So I just want to do a quick listen in the room to see if you have had this challenge or we are assuming that this challenge exists. So if you could just indulge me in the chat a little bit, what is one budget line that you have had to explain or defend more than once to a donor? Feel free to pop in your answer on the chat. It could be a finance budget line, it could be a communications budget line, it could be transport, it could be per diems, it could be, whatever it is, or any other that you've had to defend. And feel free to introduce yourself. I see Jackson saying when the personnel budget is more than 60% of the total project budget. So personnel is always an issue. Don't overthink it. Just put what comes to your mind or what you've had to experience. Payment of government officers, overhead costs, admin costs. Any more? So thank you for the responses. I'm seeing some common themes. And I imagine the rest of us who haven't responded are also nodding. I hope so. So really, this is a shared problem. I'm seeing a lot of admin costs, and some are even putting percentages. Some are as high as 60%. There's an interesting one, the one for government. Usually it's facilitation or DSA. And usually it's really a hard one to sell because the belief is they should be supporting the work that is being done because it's complementing their mandate. So again, very interesting. And we hope that by the end of this, we'll be able to have some answers if possible. So, great program, warm donor, then the budget stalls the conversation. In my experience, I've rarely seen proposals rejected because of poor program design. More often, it's because the budget, these uncomfortable things that we've put on the chart, they fail because the costs presented need to be justified. And so it is about learning. For me, it's about learning how to present budgets confidently, explain why we need these indirect costs effectively, and to move from defending numbers to defining value or to explaining value. What I've seen on the chart is people are putting percentages already, but do we really need 60% of HR costs? And if we do need, what value is it having to the overall project design and program delivery? And what value is it having to the organization so that beyond delivering project X, the organization still stands tall to be able to do other things for other partners or other donors or the community that it exists to support. And so it's normally a budget framing problem and not a budget presentation problem. So if the concept is strong and the technical reviewers really like your technical strength and the strength of the proposal, then the budget you find lands at the finance person's desk. So in my view, I think we should not be defensive, but think through what would it mean to deliver this. I will give you an example of when at some point last year, we were invited to submit a proposal to do some work on the continent, some consultation work on the continent. Actually, we were the only organization that submitted for the African continent. Other organizations from other parts of the continent went in as consortiums, and they were selecting at least one organization or a consortium to be able to deliver that work. I remember when we submitted the budget, the pushback that we received was that our budget was so high. The methodology was so strong, but the pushback was the budget was so high. And when we went in and actually reframed what we meant, first of all, it was for the entire continent, all the 54 countries on the African continent. And so one of the things that we had to explain to the people is the realities in Africa are different from the realities in Europe and are different compared to the realities in America. And so the first thing that we said is the flight costs within the continent, if we're going to be doing in-person consultations, cannot be compared to the flight costs within Europe. Secondly, in Africa, our government colleagues are used to DSAs or are entitled to DSAs when they come to some of these meetings. In other countries, that is not, it is not common practice. And there are other elements of the budget that then we had to explain and make them understand where that budget process was coming from. So before you throw in the numbers in your budget, think through it, think about why you are putting those numbers and what then it means if you're to put on the seat to be able to defend them. So because as a fundraising team, we're always anxious not to look expensive because remember, it's a competition game. We try to trim budgets. We try to remove some critical parts of the budget that then ensures that the product or the quality of the project is beyond par. So things like staffing costs, you always find you want to do part-time, but in reality, you find that your team spends much more time. Like if you do an LOE of like 10%, yet the team is putting an LOE of 20%. You may think that you are making the donor to approve that budget or that proposal, but in reality, you are doing a disservice to your own organization because the time that is supposed to be spent looking for more funding or attending to another donor is then used to deliver this project that is not sufficiently budgeted for. Things like M&D, you find that sometimes we do not give them dedicated budget lines, and we want that to be absorbed by program staff. But how will we demonstrate value? How will we demonstrate impact? What will you report? And M&D actually starts when you start conceiving the project itself. So that thing of removing things to appear more competitive compared to the rest, in most cases, it ends up harming the organization that's doing the application. The other fields that are affected is finance, HR, and safeguarding. Sometimes it's folded into 5% overhead. I don't know what exactly Benson wanted to communicate here. And actually, if he's joined, I'd be happy for him to... Is he there? Not yet. Oh. So what we're saying here is this is just a scenario that we are presenting, that the concept note is strong, the donor is excited, everything looks promising, but we are doing a disservice to ourselves, which is not the best thing, because when the budget then lands to the reviewer's desk, that is where issues start arising. When the project is approved and now we have to implement it, then we start having challenges. So suddenly we will be asked, why is staffing so high? Why is overhead included? Can't the organization absorb some of this cost? You already have the staff. Why does M&D cost this much? Yet, the expected outcomes haven't changed. You still have to deliver of the numbers that you have promised. And so then it shifts from impact to a cost conversation. So we have to demonstrate that impact comes at a cost, and in most cases, that cost is not cheap. The right talent is not cheap, systems are not cheap, and in most cases, those costs should be absorbed by the donors. So there's a proposal here on how to build a budget. On the left side is a starvation mode budget. You trim costs to look modest, to look competitive. You hide overhead and assume that it will be hidden. It will be absorbed quietly within the organization's overall budget. You're under-resourced staff and systems. You win the proposal, but then delivery becomes a problem. And actually what they normally say is, your existing donor is more important than the one that is still out there that you haven't acquired yet. So if you're not delivering, and remember, it is the work that you do that then opens the doors for you for more funding. So if the delivery is not of good quality, if there's so much bureaucracy, if you're not able to fund the delivery of that project because you under-resource the budget, then you are doing a disservice to that organization, not just in terms of budget matters, but even in terms of future funding. And then the cycle is repeated to the next funding. Now, the proposal on the right is to reflect true costs of delivering impact, frame overhead as mission fuel. Mission is one of the most difficult things to deliver. When you think about it, for the not-for-profit, for us who do mission work, it is one of the most hard things to deliver because it is qualitative. It is change. How do you measure change? If you compare mission to someone who's probably working for Safaricom and looking at M-Pesa numbers or looking at subscription numbers or looking at voice data numbers and things like that, there's a direct return on investment. You can break down the numbers, you can crunch the numbers that it makes sense. But for us, what makes it difficult from a budgeting perspective is that mission is very difficult to deliver. Mission is very difficult to cost. Justification of costs for mission is much more difficult, and that's why we're having this discussion today. Systems and staff need to be fully resourced in your budget. You need to build donor trust in your capacity. The beauty is once you cultivate a strong and good relationship with your donors, sometimes they're willing to listen to you. They are willing for you to actually push back on some of the things that they tell you to do. I think I've had instances where we've actually said that, yes, this opportunity looks great, but I don't think that we are the right fit for it. I remember there was a time when we had been approached to submit a proposal to do sort of be a fiduciary agency. So be the entity that receives the money. Then after receiving the money, you vet the subgrantees and then subgrant that money for program implementation. But when we looked at it, we felt that as an organization, we had much more to offer than being a pass-through for finances. And we actually sat with the donor and explained why we needed more than just fiduciary agency kind of arrangement with them. But this is because we built trust. So even before you put together your budgets, work on your trust, work on the relationship that you have with the donor, such that when you call them around a table for a conversation, they're more than willing to have that conversation. And we said, for this particular work that you want us to do, there's a lot of technical expertise that we bring on the table, and we do not want the project to lose on that simply because the way the grant is framed. This is also a similar conversation that you can have around budgets. And it is only possible when there's that element of trust in terms of your relationship with the donors. This is an approach that is more sustainable across multiple grants. And the moment the donor knows and realizes where you're coming from as and someone who's applying or someone who's implementing, in most cases, there's that level of respect that comes. Of course, sometimes because of how financing is and how the environment is right now, you're tempted to be desperate and take whatever they offer. But if you have a conversation that is justified, that has proper things that justify why you're costing for things the way you're costing, then in most cases, they would be willing to listen. And again, it's for our colleagues who we go with for such kind of opportunities to also be honest. Because if you're not honest as organization Y and your budget is much lower than organization X, what you end up doing is, well, you'll end up getting the money, mess the organization, and everything that's on the left side will happen. However, the other organizations might miss it, and the donor might feel like it's actually cheap to deliver on mission, yet it is not cheap to deliver on mission. So it's a call on all of us to be able to also protect the donor environment and to make them understand what it actually takes to deliver on mission. So these are some of the 5 tools that Benson was proposing. One is full cost confidence framework. And these are things that I think organizations can invest in. I normally say that finance should be part of the conversations in the beginning. Don't meet with programs people to design the program or the project without having your finance folks. And even within finance, there's special skills for costing. Do you have the right pricing skills? And I think in private sector, they've really excelled in putting together all the costs elements before actually putting out the price for something. So even within your finance teams, do we have people who have this skill of costing activities in a way that is as accurate as possible, and going beyond activities and looking at some of the support things that are needed to be able to deliver on that activity. The other thing is overhead as a value driver pitch. I mean, don't undersell your organization. It takes time to build a brand, even for your own organization, which is very critical. It takes time to build credibility. It takes time to even have a talented team, time and budget. So ensure that you use your overhead as a value driver and not as a cost on your budget. There's also indirect rate negotiation guides that you can have as an organization, funder-friendly, honest budget blueprints. I think if you can have those as tools, they're also important. And then also finance fundraising alignment tools will be really, really important in this kind of conversations. So think about it. Where do you struggle the most? Is it costing? Is it overhead conversations? Is it the negotiation part? Is it that finance and fundraising and programs are not together when some of this information is being designed? I know sometimes the deadlines are very tight and you just want to put together what you can in a rush and end up losing out on the finance, thinking about everything else that then will help you to negotiate when you eventually go to meet the donor. So these are 5 key pillars that are very, very critical for us. So this one is calculating the present and true cost of delivering impact. I think I've spoken briefly about that without diluting your operational reality. So what do you need? You need finance, you need programs, you need fundraising for them to sit down. So don't start negotiating as a fundraiser and locking it in before having your conversation with the finance people. Separate direct program costs from the institutional systems that make delivery possible. And this is something that we typically overlook during the course of our work. Cost every function that this program will depend on, be it HR, be it finance, be it M&D, and actually comms is actually conspicuously missing here. And I'm a true believer that visibility is a big driver of fundraising. So if you're not costing for visibility, you are missing your next donor. It's like you are advertising in the dark. It's like, you know, putting your products out when people are not walking on the streets at night. So ensure that you really budget for comms, you budget for knowledge management, you budget for M&E, you budget for safeguarding policies, you budget for HR, and even have contingency plans and miscellaneous line budgets on for your project. Present the full number with confidence. You're not apologizing as a price of quality delivery. It takes a whole lot of things to deliver quality programming. Like I've said, visibility, I've talked about quality talent and talented people who don't come cheap. Anchor every cost line to a specific outcome that the donor already cares about. So, for example, the donor would want to know that whatever impact you've achieved together with them and the community is out there for people to see. Even research should be part of some of these costs that we are putting. So ensure that each cost is anchored on that. There's also overhead as a value driver, as I've said, that is the pillar 2. So on this one, simple, relatable language to reframe administrative and institutional costs as fuel for the mission, not a burden. For example, if there's pushback on transport, I think the one that I've had the most is that NGOs use Land Cruisers and big cars. Yes. Why? Because the places where we deliver the work, the roads are impassable. Yeah. So how will you get there if you don't go with the Land Cruiser? So that then helps you to negotiate for the budget. That then helps you to defend the budget. Replace overhead with language that donors respect. And this actually reminds me of a budget that we're doing this week. So there are languages like if you say event coordination, I mean, but there's a way that you can reframe that line and make it look like the value that is actually contributing to the overall program. The delivery infrastructure. So the language that we use in budgets also really, really matters a lot. If you put things like if you put something like per diems and all that, that is normally part of stakeholder mobilization. So maybe stakeholder mobilization is a better term than working with something like per diems or local transport or flight costs or things like that. So there are ways within which you can reframe your language and make it a bit chewable for the donor. Show what breaks without it. How would, if you were to remove 10% from the overhead, what then happens to the overall KPIs or the overall deliverables of the project? In most cases, when donors push back, we want to remove the line or reduce the line, but not think about how that then weakens delivery. And that is something that you need to come up with as you are doing your costing for your budget. Use one concrete story, a systemic investment that protected a past grants results. Nobody wants to invest in an organization without governance structures. It means you have to pay for board time and ensure that you have your board. Nobody wants to give an organization money that does not have accounting system. So you have to pay for your ERP. You have to pay for your bank charges and all of that. So of course, as I've said, you have to frame them in a way that then when you go to defend, even the donor knows that this actually real costs that the organization has to absorb. Speak in outcomes and not accounting categories. Again, the language. There's a language that finance people understand, but there's also a language that program people want to understand. So ensure that if a finance person is in the room, you are resonating with the finance person. If a programs person and M&D person in the room, you are resonating with them from an outcome perspective, from an impact perspective, and how all of that then comes together to ensure that there's a strong program delivery. The third pillar is on the indirect rate negotiation guide. So this one, defend and negotiate your indirect cost using solid organizational evidence and confident positioning. Like I said, the project you're doing today is what will open the next door for you tomorrow. So if you do a shoddy job, and sorry?
Go on, Corazon. Sorry, I think a speaker, a participant had their mic on. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, I thought Benson had joined. Okay. Can I carry on?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So in terms of indirect rate negotiation guide, one lesson I've learned through donor negotiations is this. Never walk into that room without knowing your numbers. Please don't submit things that you don't know. And then you're asked and you're like, oh, yeah. So know your numbers. At least that is the basic, the minimum, the bare minimum. Know your institutional cost base. How much does it take to run your organization? And be honest with it, because the depth and breadth of your work differs from one organization to the other. So don't assume that if you're bidding against an international organization and you're a small organization, the costs of running those organizations are really, really different. And you have to be able to know those numbers and be able to defend them. Know your indirect cost rate. Know what you can negotiate and how low you can go based on your finance conversations internally. Know your ceiling. Is it 14%? Is it 20? Is it so that when you go into that negotiation, and not just knowing the numbers, also the justification behind the numbers. When negotiating, do not immediately reduce your rate. Explain it. Show the evidence. Give the stories. This is the value of videos, or these are the qualities of videos that we'll get out of it. And not just videos, because those are then aesthetics, but in terms of even the kind of community engagement levels that you need to do. I could be proposing 5, someone is proposing 10, and my proposal is being rejected because I'm proposing 10. Justify why you need 10 community dialogues. Justify why you need to meet government people the many times that you've put. So you really need to know your numbers, and you really need to show why some of them are higher or lower, or why you have actually prescribed what you're prescribed in terms of methodology. Explain the systems that you have in place that are supporting that investment. Very often, more donors are open to conversations that are more articulated, because the reality also is when you identify a partner who delivers quality work, you want to continue working with them. And so see this as an entry point for more work or for increased investment for this same donor. So use this negotiation as a way to create trust, to create a relationship, so that when they have opportunities in the future, they look to you because you are honest in the beginning, you have justification for the numbers that you've put, but most importantly, that your delivery is of quality. So that's the third pillar, and then I'll move to the fourth and the last one. I don't know why I can't move my slides. Yeah, so not all budgets challenges are about costs. Sometimes they're about clarity. And actually, in most cases, they're about clarity. Just going back to the example that I was giving in the beginning, when they looked at our budget before the conversation, they said, how come Africa is submitting the
Just a minute, Corazon is joining back in. Just a slight network glitch. Okay.
I think as we wait for,
join.
Is she back?
Yeah, I can can see she's joining. Yeah. She's joining.
Yeah, but I think as she joins, I would like to you can request participants maybe if they could also share. Anybody would like to share their own experience in budgeting, etc. So either now or at one point. So Brenda, just feel free to, in between, to welcome anybody who would like to share their own experience about budgeting as we wait for Corazon to come in.
Yeah, and you can also add in questions. If you have any questions, you can take this chance and drop them in while Corazon joins, and then when she comes in, we can tackle them straight on.
And perhaps we can have people like begin to put questions in the chat.
Yes.
So that when Corazon is back, we can discuss that.
Yes, yes. And anyone with a unique fundraising experience or a budget issue that they'd like to share? Hello?
Yeah, I see the the forum is very quiet. I'm assuming they are reflecting. But one thing that keeps on crossing my mind is that thing called the organization efficiency, effectiveness. Because when you start costing, you've got an organization that is so expensive to maintain. Many big positions, the way Kenya Airways was. So big positions, big titles, very high salaries, maybe coined because you used to get a lot of money from USAID, the former or the late. Is when you begin now to look at the cost of all your things, finance, programs, M&E, yeah, it becomes very high. And maybe you're competing against an organization that has been working with more modest donors. So these are people who are, they are paid maybe half or a third of the salaries similar positions are. They don't even have some of these positions in place. So essentially, when you both cost your budgets, is one will be higher than the other. And then the next question comes in is, are you able then to deliver, then to demonstrate that you can deliver then value for money? Yeah, can you defend your brand? So the difference, like in consultancy, because I'm in consultancy, between PwC doing the work and Mike doing the work, and maybe some mid-level organization doing the work, yeah, who is the donor likely then to risk the thing with? Are they willing to pay the heavy overhead costs that PricewaterhouseCoopers would have? Yeah, vis-a-vis the lower costs maybe that a middle-level player would have. So I think even as we look at this and we talk about value for money costing organizations costs, accurately or honestly, is the big elephant in the room is, are you running an efficient, effective organization that is competitive, or is it perceived to be wasteful, expensive without delivering the value for money that underpins it? Yeah, because if you cannot then deal with that and capitalize on opportunities like AI now, yeah, and other technologies that are coming up, yeah, and so on, then it's going to be hard for you then to continue to compete. Brenda?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have Corazon who's back. And Corazon? Yeah.
I think my village people are not happy with me. It can't happen to me, right? In the
We're
yeah,
glad
sorry about that.
it happens.
Yeah, I lost power. So I think I can, as I move towards wrapping up so that we can have a conversation, I like what Mike has brought up, which is accountability, as we call for our people to be accountable in different spaces. I think also as CSOs, we really have to be accountable with our costs. So there's defending what's there, but then there's also the value for money that then the donor will get from you. So I'll just carry on from where I left and try to make it short so that we can engage, because it's not like I have all the expertise here. I'd like to hear from colleagues on the call as well. So let me bring back the few slides that are left and then we can get to that. So we were talking about funder-friendly budget blueprints, and we've talked about not all budget challenges are about cost. Most times it's about clarity. It's about spending limited time in reviewing your own proposals because you want to finish and submit. So lead with a one-page summary that provides category totals before you provide the granular line items, group costs, the way the donor thinks. So sometimes when you look at an RFP, it has the key objectives. So if you can put your costs under each objective together with the activities, then that makes it easy to follow and able to see how the cost is tied to the delivery of the objective. Use plain language, narrative notes where possible to sort of break down the complex high lines. Use consistent formatting to help build trust before the person actually looks at the numbers. So the structure of the budget, I think what you're saying really, really matters. And I don't know if there are any good examples out there that you can share with colleagues, KFP, but I mean, if anybody has a good budget structure, please, you can share with people. I know some donors come with, they do have templates, those templates, you can use them. But for the donors who asked you for proposals without templates, I think you need to have some proper structure for your budgets. Use simple language. I think you've said that, and also incorporate explanatory notes as much as possible. So this is a very critical part. Make it clean, consistent in terms of formatting, and your budget should tell a story. Your budget really should tell a story. It should help the reviewer understand how you produce results as an organization, and also should bring elements of transparency. The more transparent you are, the more trustworthy the more the donor will have a lot of trust in you. The fifth and the last pillar is finance, the fundraising alignment tool. So get both your fundraising teams and finance teams on the same page. It's really never an easy conversation. It's easier to say it's easier said than done, because for finance people, their targets are more on how much is being spent. Their targets are burn rates. For fundraising people, our targets tend to be income. So sometimes we find ourselves not being on the same page. And so because of that, it's always important to cultivate that relationship even before an RFP is issued. So build the budget together from day one. Talk to them about the concept that you want to put together, not after the narrative is already written. Let them not just validate costs, but let them give you the cost assumptions early. And then we can do the donor framing because we understand the donor language as fundraisers. One shared budget template, one shared timeline, one final sign-off should be a step within your organization. And then you also need to have elements of debriefing before or submission. So it's a very essential pillar that we have to really pay attention to. It is the fundraiser who will develop the narrative, because we are the ones who understand the donor language. Finance will give you the cost to help you build that narrative into the proposal. So do not rush to meet the deadline just because. Please ensure that you put in a lot of thought from both a narrative perspective and also from a finance perspective. So the best proposals need you to work together with your programs, finance, monitoring and evaluations, your partnerships team, and everyone who's contributing from the beginning. That contributes to a very strong narrative at the end. So yeah, I think that's it. So one thing to take back after this conversation is for executive directors, ask finance for the true full cost figure before the next proposal narrative is written. Ensure that you do that. For the finance director is to bring your indirect rate evidence to the table before fundraising negotiates its way. For program managers, they need to name the systems that the program depends on, both directly and indirectly, so that those can be captured when the costing is being done. And for the fundraising team, we have to and we must practice the overhead as a value driver pitch on one warm donor this month. It's the only way that you will be able to master the language that then you'll use to not just justify your budget. Actually, when you go to these negotiation tables, don't look at it as a fight for money. It's for you to showcase and demonstrate the value that you bring to the table. So what value are you giving the donor? So it's not like, give me this money. It's like, this is what I'm giving you. And in exchange, then the money comes in. So that is the call for fundraiser. So I want to stop it there. Welcome any questions or any feedback that might be on the call. Thank you. Back to you, Brenda.
So, Corazon, maybe I can start by thanking you so much for the presentation. And I can imagine the participants here are at different levels.
Mhm.
So there are those who are, like the presentation today is talking about where the budget is a problem, where you have already gone some steps until you are with the donor and you are now doing negotiation. And I think that is now at a very, very advanced step. Maybe if we worked backward and you could share, or Mike, if you are on the line also, you can share also just some ideas on how to do budgeting, because that is also some principles that sometimes some people fail to do. So if there are people who get preoccupied with fitting whatever their program. So a program or a call for proposals is, let me just use a figure, is 100,000. So we are trying to fit our work to fit 100,000, and yet whatever we are doing might be over 500,000. So would you kindly share your experience of how to go about it? Where you are requesting from a donor, let me say 100,000, and another 300 will be coming from another source. So how do you communicate co-funding? That is one. How do you start even the budgeting process? Do you come to it at the end of it when you have already done a program design, or do you engage the finance people as they are walking around? And just share some experience from your side, and maybe Mike also is in the space. You can also share. Thank you very much, Corazon, for the presentation.
So, Maurice, thank you very much for the question that you've asked, and Corazon, you can be thinking about the answer. Mike, as well, even as you come across. But I wanted to, first of all, before we move on to the Q&A, help us summarize what it is that we had from Corazon this morning. And then I have also seen that questions have started in the chat box as well. So in the presentation that Corazon gave, we first of all had that the cheapest looking budget is not necessarily the strongest budget. I don't know whether you heard what she said, but that's one of the things that she said. She also mentioned that the full cost budgeting is about honesty. So both costing, and we must be visible both in how we costing the programs and activities and all of that. Third, she also said that this work of budgeting cannot be left to fundraising alone. I hope you heard that. She also said that we need to explain costs better, but we must not confuse better framing with hiding costs, because in one of the examples, I think in the third slide, she shared some hidden costs. The budgeter had some hidden costs. And finally, what I heard was that every organization needs to know its floor. So before you get donor pushback, we already should know what the minimum level of cost recovery and all of that should be. So as I moderate the Q&A, we'll start off with Corazon, if you can answer what Maurice asked, and then we will move on to the questions in the chat box. And then also, if Mike wants to answer or provide more input as you answer, Mike, you're very welcome. So Corazon, to Maurice's question.
Yes, thank you. And I'd welcome other thoughts as well, because we are sharing. So I think, Maurice, there's a question you ask about how do you communicate co-funding? As an organization, you can position yourself as an organization that has relationships beyond one donor. What we are seeing in the environment right now is donors don't most donors want to come together, even the big ones like the Gates Foundation, the Buffett Foundation, they want to rally around something that's already being funded. So they want to layer on something that's already existing, whether it's through government or through other donors. So increasingly, I think as CSOs, we have to really cultivate the strength of working with more than one donor in one particular area. So if you're in SRH, for example, you should be able to know what the landscape looks like for SRHR, what that landscape looks like in terms of which donors are there. And as you are bidding for SRHR, who else can you tap into? So for example, if it's Gates Foundation, for example, you're bidding with them, and then you know very well SIF is interested in SRHR or another donor is interested in SRHR, then you can come to the table confidently and say, yes, we're putting this in. Whatever impact you want to achieve is not enough, but we're able to pool our relationship with X and Y to bring more money to then make this impact greater. That is what even, most donors now are looking for. They want pooled funding. They want to see that more and more philanthropies or more and more donors are being associated with one particular issue. So that's probably one of the way. Really try to work on your relationship with multiple donors within a certain space and know what they might find. And most of them now really want to layer on existing funding. In terms of budgets, I think some donors are really upfront and they do share budget ceilings. And even for us, if we are responding to an RFP, I've never seen an occasion where even when the donors, if the donor doesn't put it out there, we normally ask, we are working on this proposal, because they put contacts there for questions. So we are working on this proposal, but we are not sure of what the budget ceiling is. So please do ask. They will tell you whether it was intentional, whether they omitted it intentionally, or they will come back and say, work with this range of budget. So that then gives you a way to be able to know how far you can go. It is also very important to use data. Chances are it is not the first time that the organization is bidding for funding. So what does it truly cost? And actually that, I think it's a question that someone asked, how does an organization determine its direct cost? This should not be determined when you're responding. These are quarterly financial conversations or even monthly when you do the management accounts and all of that. The organization should be able to determine how much does it really take to run the organization, how much does it really take to deliver on a program. So those figures, of course, it might be a range. Like I know for certain organizations, it probably is 14%. You can't take anything that's lower than 14%. And if at all it's lower than 14%, there's an escalation matrix before that bid is then accepted, because probably the grant is larger. So then the 10% is even much more than the 14% that you've set as an organization. I'll give the example of for example, Global Fund. Global Fund gives very small overhead cost recovery, but the amount of the funding is large. So it makes sense if you do less overhead costs. But sometimes you find that the overhead costs that the organization that is bidding has put as a policy is way more than what they're giving. So it's more of, do you actually know how you're operating? And I think that is the very basic for each organization. We need to know what it takes. And that's why I said sometimes it's hard to deliver on mission, because when you talk to someone who even runs a kiosk, they will tell you, I'm able to pay my rent, I'm able to keep my lights on if I do this amount of sales. But sometimes as NGOs, we don't look at things from a financial perspective, but we really have to. We really have to have that business side of things as much as we do have the mission side of things.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Corazon. I think there's a question that Maurice had also asked as he was ending his question on whether you should first design the program cost or first put in a budget or something like that, which goes to a question that I've seen in the chat because those ones are coming hard and fast. How can administrative or overhead costs be effectively justified within grant budgets, particularly when institutional requirements vary between approximately 8 and 20%? And that's a question that's been asked by Simon Omondi.
Sorry, do you want me to take Simon's question?
Answer the second part of Maurice's question, which had to do with, so is the budgeting coming before program costs? Maurice, you asked, if I'm not clearly capturing your question, please jump in. So it's sort of like, I think, a chicken and egg situation. Do you do your program work, or do you do budgeting first when you're developing the proposal? Is it program design before budget, or is it budgets before program design? And Mike can jump in as well.
Yeah, maybe as Corazon thinks about that, and to come down to the issue of program design, which in a way influences what we're talking about. And this in reality also should reflect experience. There's a difference between an organization that is starting, one that has been there for 5 years, 20 years, 30 years. Yeah, and an organization that has been there for some time and claims that space, yeah, should be able to know if I'm running a workshop, say, yeah, because a lot of people here from Kenya in Nakuru, yeah, in a 2-star, 3-star hotel, yeah, for 40 people, the average cost per person is 3,000 per day. Yeah, if I go out to, let's say, Kitale, it's 4,000 per day. Yeah, there's a lot of information that we get through into finance that we don't appreciate. It just goes in, becomes dead information. No one analyzes it to tell us, the average cost of delivering this particular service or product, yeah, to beneficiaries in this area is $2 per person or $5 per person. You don't have that because we have a lot of information experience we generate that we never ever use in whatever way. But coming down to issues of design, approaches are important. I want to train farmers, yeah, in good agricultural practices in Nyeri, for example. Yeah, I can decide, okay, I'll drag these people out and take them to Hotspan Hotel, and there maybe I'm spending 6,000-7,000 shillings per day, depending, or even more if I'm accommodating them. Yeah, and out of the money available, maybe I'll only be able then to run through 300 farmers or so. But I could decide to use a farmer field schools approach. Yeah, where I'm going to the farmers' farms, the lead farmer or a farmer who's doing well. Yeah, and they can have 300 to 500 farmers. Yeah, so with the same budget, just depending on the approach you take, whether I'm using a workshop approach or I'm going to the farm, already beginning to influence heavily the delivery costs, yeah, and impacts that I'm able then to demonstrate from that dollar, that euro, that shilling that I have. And you're looking at value for money coming in. Yeah, other aspects that influence delivery. Which staff are you putting in? Being honest, we want to put in everyone because people are looking at covering their salaries. So the executive director wants to be there, a certain proportion, whether or not that person. But you're looking in at that particular project and you're asking, who do we really need to deliver this project? Yeah, can it be done? Does it require the ED? And if the ED, then what proportion of their time is realistic? Should we have the program manager, director? Should we have project people? So who does that project actually need, and who are we putting in? Again, that ties into the wider design on how you come up with this program. Partners. Yeah, each organization is different because you have different people, different experiences, different structure, different salary scales. So you'll be asking then in this particular thing, then do I want, for example, to work with a CBO lower down or a smaller NGO that is able to deliver this thing at lower cost overhead? Then I'm able then to deliver if I use my own staff. Locations. If I take if I have a project for poultry with women and I run in Kajiado and I'm based in, it's cheaper. But the moment I take it to Rukana, again, it has cost implications coming down to it. Staff. Am I using full-time office-based staff? Am I using part-time staff? Yeah. Am I using volunteers? Am I using consultants? In kind of consultants do I really need? What I'm saying in all these things is there's far more room for being able to shape your delivery costs, with that project than want to acknowledge. I think once you come away from the fact that I want as much of my salary covered as possible, then I'm able then to get into a space where I've got an influence to say, then within this thing, then we are able then to deliver this project viably. Because you don't want to lose money. A lot of us are delivering projects, but we are losing money. Yeah, we are using very expensive approaches. We are using, yeah, we're putting too much stuff for that 100,000, 200,000 budget project. Yeah, and at the end of the day, it doesn't make financial sense to us. It burns out the staff. But on the other hand, in a competitive environment, and let's be honest, donors are becoming tight-fisted. I've seen big donors, I don't want to name them, now going down the food chain and working with organizations they not have touched half a decade ago because they still want to deliver, but the big organizations are too expensive. So they're going down to the smaller organizations and trying to milk them as much as possible to have delivery for what is there. But we always have to be saying then we're in a competitive marketplace, value for money has a meaning. Yeah. Sales can deliver the same level of impact with assurance at $2 per beneficiary or $5 per beneficiary, and you're telling me $20 per beneficiary. Why should I take yours? Unless you convince me that it's made in heaven. Thank you, Jackie.
Awesome, Mike. Corazon, even as you answer.
I think
Go on.
the question that Maurice asked in terms of the flow of what comes first, for me, my take would be each organization should know how much it actually takes to run programs, and that is a finance conversation. So the finance team should look at everything else, all factors considered in terms of support functions and existing programs. Yeah. And of course, most of the support functions are supported by pooled funding from existing programs. So that reality can only be shared by finance. When it comes to program budgeting, in case you're introducing a new program, do you think that the existing team will be able to deliver just what Mike was saying? Or will you need extra people, extra systems, extra licenses for those systems that are already existing? So what extra things do you need to onboard a new program? So it's not really a question of what should come first. For me, I think as a minimum thing or as a basic, all organizations need to know what, and the finance people can say this, what do they need to run? What do they need to keep their lights on? And what percentage is that? And how is that percentage then divided across, the grants that you are bidding for or the ones that are existing? And that's actually, they even come up with a decay curve. So of all the commitments that you have, the multi-year commitments, at what point should the organization get worried in terms of when we get here, then we are no longer going to exist? So it is both a finance conversation in terms of coming up with that baseline. And then for the grants, then you say, based on this, then we cannot take less than 10% or we cannot take less than 5%. And if we have to, then there are other factors that have to come into play. Like, for example, the amount of the grant, or there's a matching funding, or it is an entry point into a bigger relationship that we're anticipating. So it's not like that becomes an absolute red line. It becomes a red line where then another conversation is had in terms of, well, this overhead cost or this direct cost, the administrative, the overhead percentage is lower than what we would absorb as an organization. However, this relationship is critical for us because of 1, 2, 3. So that then opens up that conversation, and the determination can be made between leadership and the program folks whether to go for an opportunity or not to move ahead with the opportunity. I want to reiterate something, that sometimes cheap will not give you what you're looking for. And it's really undercutting also people in the industry. It is good to provide value for money, but unless you're creative with your methodology, and remember, you are bidding as multiple organizations. So don't shy away from putting in the true cost. I think I've seen someone asking, how do we communicate indirect cost? You can, of course, instead of doing physical meetings, you can opt for virtual meetings. They are cheaper, etc., etc. But will you achieve the same outcome if you compare a virtual meeting and a physical meeting? So if you strongly feel that for the donor to achieve whatever impact or outcome they're looking for, it is only a physical meeting that will achieve that, please go ahead and host it and defend it because of either past experience, because of evidence. If you think that you need extra language to reach out to people, if you think you need government people for more than a week or 2 weeks, and that will deliver the outcome that the donor is looking for, by all means, they'll be more than willing to listen. Yeah. And so for me, it's more of, what does your methodology look like? What is your theory of change? But then again, how are you communicating or cultivating relationships with your donors? Because the better relationships you have, the more room you have for some of these conversations, and the more room you also get the donors' feedback and make adjustments as necessary on your part. So it's really not a purely numbers question. It is a question of clarity. It is a question of defending what you believe in as an organization from a theory of change perspective. It is a question of delivering value for money, and it is a question for relationships. So it's never just about the numbers. The numbers do matter, and they do matter a lot. But do remember that sometimes whatever counts may not count. You may think that reaching, my proposal can say I'll reach 3,000 people. Another proposal will say I'll reach 1,000 people. But when you look at the person who reaches 1,000 people, what that translates to is different from what the 3,000 people kind of reach translates to. So it's really how you sell your narrative, and not just selling a narrative for the sake of PR and optics, but it's selling something that you truly believe in, selling a methodology and an approach that you truly believe it, and costing it out in a way that then does not give the service to the organization. And as I said, organizations are in varied kind of levels, and that's okay, and that's fine, because also donors know when they come to this organization, what will they get vis-a-vis when they go to the other organization. We've had instances where money is given to local CSOs with due respect, and the money gets lost. It cannot be accounted for. We've similarly had cases where money is given to big organizations, and it's all spent on overhead. So really what you're trying to say is the delivery of the work that really matters, and the methodology that matters. It's never a question. Yes, numbers do matter and they count, but sometimes they don't count. It's more about how you justify. Yeah.
Thank you, Corazon. I'm hoping that Simon Omondi, you've had your question answered. Derek Juma, you've had your question answered, because Corazon has touched on all of that. I think there was also the question that Hannah Munyao had asked on how organizations should go about determining indirect costs. I had some response to that. If you still have not had the response clarified, we still have Corazon and we have Mike here, and those questions can be answered. We have an additional thought from William Omwega, who says, co-funding can also send a strong signal to prospective donors that they are being invited to invest in a proven and viable concept, and this can increase a funder's confidence in supporting the project, particularly when the initiative aligns with their priorities and does not conflict with their funding interests. We had a question from Caroline Yokabi. When resources are limited, what budget components should never be reduced because they are critical to the funder confidence? Mike, do you want to answer that one? And then Corazon, maybe you can look at the chat and see whether there's anything I've missed as Mike answers that question.
Yeah, so I think let me start by saying we need to accept that not all projects are for us. Sometimes you look at an option out there and it says, okay, no, this is not for me. Yeah, it's either too tight or there's too little money, or it doesn't work for me. So you need to stand up and put out your bottom lines. Yeah, once you set your place in the market and you've decided this is the kind of organization we are, this is the kind of brand, this is our impact, this is what we deliver, you're able to look out and say this is the minimum need to be able then to deliver. Coming down to what are the no-nos, of course, the moment then you are burning out your staff, yeah, you're not recovering at least the basic staff costs and operational costs in delivering a subsidized, and let me repeat again, subsidized product to a donor. It doesn't make sense because you become a donor to a donor. It's a partnership, yeah? It's win-win on both sides. They're also going to brag about it because they also have their mission, vision, things they want to do, their objectives, yeah? So it's not a one-way street. They are benefiting, you're benefiting. But it has to be then beneficial to both sides. If at the end of the day, then you're taking staff that you're using that are paid for another donor in a different initiatives, diverting that staff time, yeah, and costs to subsidize this other donor who might be tight-fisted. Maybe we are the ones who put it, but they might be tight-fisted, or we were underselling ourselves, like Benson and Corazon were saying. Then there's a problem. At the end of the day, if we are going to get into a project where our staff are working till 11, even when they leave the office, they are carrying laptops. They have no family time at home. I'm seeing Corazon has one, which is great. Yeah, so I mean, we need time for our kids, our spouses, our families. That's our first business. But if people can't sleep, if their family life is suffering, if their spiritual, social life is suffering because they're on this project, you are sweating, they are putting in twice as much work time as they should, which again, goes against human rights. To subsidize a project that we should not have taken is an issue. So if it can't cover its costs and the donor doesn't appreciate your value, just walk away. Yeah, that's my view. Thank you, Jackie.
Awesome. So we are winding down. We wanted to make sure that we stop at the top of the hour at 12 noon, but we also know that we started 10 minutes late. So in that respect, I want to ask Corazon whether there's anything in the comments that you have seen that we have left out. Even as I applaud Jackson Langat, who says that he saw a comment on a bus company that goes, "We are not scared of our competitors that charge less. They know the value of their service." And so he had a question: how does quality assurance processes implicate on the budget and still remain competitive? And then Noreen asks, for new organizations with limited funding history, what helps convince donors that proposed budget is realistic and that the organization can manage the funds effectively? I had a response to that question, to Noreen's question, even as Corazon and Mike was speaking, but maybe you can say something about it. And I also want to say, then I'll give a concluding remark, because I want to tell people where they can find answers to all these questions we have on budgeting. So go on ahead.
It's good. Jackie, good to know you have an encyclopedia. I think we all want to access that.
I have a solution for all of us that I'm about to tell you, but answer.
I mean, for Noreen's question, I don't think there's really a direct answer. It's really how you position yourself and how you build relationships. A lot of these things are dependent on relationships and also how genuine you are. Sometimes it just takes confidence. It takes someone to mention your name in the room. It takes a testimony. So it could be even from your strategic partners that you've worked with. They may have not funded you, but they have so much confidence in you and they have trust in you. That can help to make a case for your budget. Again, it is the theory of change and the methodology. Yeah. And if you have any documentation or any evidence, even if it's not directly from a donor, there are other ways that people look at how genuine an organization is. Who's on your board? Who's on your advisory board, be it governance or advisory board? Which type of staff do you have? What are you proposing? So there are many elements that then add to your credibility beyond the budget. How faithful are you to the mission that you are working on and things of that sort? So what are you putting out there, even from a thought leadership perspective? So it's many elements that can go a long way in helping you get through some of these doors, even if it's for your first time. So you really have to look at those elements and ensure that you are building that visibility where it is needed. So maybe just to say that a budget is not just a spreadsheet. It is really the statement that genuinely communicates what it takes to create change. So don't be shy. Don't be scared of donors. I think the more I do this work, the more I get bolder when going for donor conversations. In the beginning, you felt like, oh, let's get it. But I think the more you do it, the more donors know your value, the better it becomes for your organization. And I will give this analogy. If you have ever worked with a fundi, if you're a Kenyan, there's always a cheaper one. But we all have stories of the cheaper fundis, right? We all have experiences of what then ends up happening. You end up spending more on what you actually cut corners to, thinking that you will save some money. So it's just the same anecdote, even in the funding space. What might look cheap in the beginning, what might look sellable, will eventually cost you an entire donor relationship. And if you work with a good fundi, chances of recommending them or calling them for another project are very high. Similarly, donors want to work with people who deliver. So if you are genuine enough, the first time you talk to them, you deliver well, chances are when another grant comes, when another opportunity comes, they will reach out to you. I've seen instances, multiple instances, where you are told we are only requesting select organization to submit bids. Why? Because they believe in you. So don't cut corners to get that money today and destroy an entire relationship simply because you wanted the budget to look cheap. So I'm a big proponent of pushing back in a respectable way, with evidence, with clarity, but building a reputation for your organization, even if you just work with 5 donors, those are worth more than trying to fish everybody else with less budgets and not really with less budgets, but with compromised costs that then end up hurting the reputation of your organization, not just with the donors, but even with the communities that you're delivering for. So that will be my parting shot. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So I see that it is 12 o'clock on the dot. It's actually 12:01. We had a comment from Silas Owiti, who wanted us to comment on ESG, environmental social governance cost that is needed as per the reporting, the requirements. So just as a final parting shot, so ESG reporting is not cost-free. When you look at your budget, ESG reporting is not cost-free. You're required to make sure that you're doing data collection, safeguarding and social impact systems have to be in place. Are you doing environmental monitoring? All these are costs that need to actually be put in. So, and they should be recognized in the grant budget. So if you're doing a grant application that needs ESG reporting, you need to be very clear on what those ESG measures are so that you don't undercost on or leave out some. But then also we cannot demand stronger accountability while refusing to fund the systems that make it possible. So you must put those costs in your budget. Whatever it is that you're doing that's going to deliver value and impact to communities, you must make sure that you put that in. So ladies and gentlemen, I promised I have a solution for you for how we can tackle all these budgeting issues. My solution is, drum roll please. My solution is you need to register for the 32nd East Africa Resource Mobilization Workshop. Did you hear me? You need to make sure you are registered for the 32nd East Africa Resource Mobilization Workshop, because for that workshop, I promise you, your budgeting questions will be sorted out. Even as you prepare to come, please come with your budget. Let's round table. I know that there is a masterclass that's speaking to this issue, so you cannot miss that conference. You cannot miss it. And as I say my final word, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. I see we were 57 online. Thank you for the support that you give to KFP. If you are not registered, please make sure you're a registered member. There are discounts that are associated with being a member. And now I want to just say thank you to Corazon, thank you, Mike, thank you to our chair, Maurice, and I will hand it over to Brenda and the Secretariat to wrap up and tell us what next. Brenda, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you so much, Corazon, for that amazing session. Thank you for stepping in. Thank you for all the questions. I am sure our participants are very, very satisfied, as we can see from the reactions that we're getting in the room. Thank you so much. Continue giving their flowers. This was an amazing, amazing interactive session. I have learned so much by proxy. So without further ado, since time is far much gone, Zoom takes us out of this. I will share with you the presentation that we just had via your email, so you can check after this on your emails. We'll get the and also a recording for this talk if you want to review back to it, if there's anything that you'd like to go through. I will also share the rest of our upcoming coffee talks and the workshops that we have. We have the upcoming Public Sector Resource Mobilization Workshop and the Eastern African Resource Mobilization Workshop that Jackie talked about. So you have all this in your emails. And thank you much for kindly. Would like to ask you all to put on your cameras and we can take an e-selfie before we leave. And also when you check on your chat box, there are links to a message I have shared. You can find our WhatsApp, a link to our WhatsApp group with the KFP fundraisers across Africa. You will also find a link to join our membership. And also I kindly implore you to please fill the feedback form kindly. Okay, so maybe we can all get ready for that e-selfie in the next 5 seconds or so. Okay. All right. So in 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be in touch. Have a lovely, lovely Thursday. See you on the next coffee talk.